So our next speaker is Associate Professor Elizabeth Williams. Liz Williams is a nuclear physicist by training and has a PhD in experimental nuclear structure from Yale University. Maybe you can explain exactly what that means later on. She joined ANU in 2012 and has done many things at her time at ANU, including leading the creation of the nuclear degrees down at ANU. She's currently working, doing research, focusing on the responsible integration of AI into safety critical systems and contexts, such as nuclear, I guess. Today, Liz is going to talk about some of the challenges and opportunities that Australia faces in supporting a sovereign nuclear workforce and discuss the current state of nuclear research and education in the Australian university sector. Please welcome Liz to the stage.
Thank you so much, Joe. Thank you to the organizers for having me here. And thank you all for being here. I know you're all busy, so it's wonderful to see you all. I am an ANU academic and I lead our nuclear systems discipline, but I am here representing a community of Australian nuclear researchers and educators in the tertiary sector in Australia. And I have co-authors for this talk. We're working towards building that whole of nation response. And so they have kindly helped me put this together today. So to begin with, this is what I'm going to discuss. I'm going to give you a situation report from the perspective of the Australian tertiary sector, or at least my colleagues who I am talking with on a regular basis. I'll talk to you about the need for sovereign nuclear literacy in the current Australian environment, and also what it looks like to build a nuclear workforce pipeline that is not only fit for purpose, but is also sustainable. I'll then talk to you a bit about the network that we've been building, its purpose, how we've been working together, and what we're hoping to do with that. And I will then conclude. So with regards to the situation, this situation report is based on the many discussions, the market research, and so on that my colleagues and I have been doing to figure out how best to respond to AUKUS and the need for a nuclear workforce, or more of a nuclear workforce than we had previously. Based on that, we have found that the demand for sovereign nuclear expertise already outstripped supply prior to the AUKUS announcement, and we've seen demand increase. Because of the restrictions with regards to civil nuclear in Australia, that means we don't already have a large existing workforce we can draw from for this. And importing nuclear expertise is not necessarily a practical solution. While there are people like me who have come from overseas because of the need for nuclear workers here in Australia, I first came over for a job at CSIRO because they needed somebody who knew something about nuclear physics. Right now, it's actually getting harder to do that because there is a global nuclear workforce shortage. And for many of the roles that we are looking at here in Australia, we have citizenship restrictions for those roles. So given all of that, we also have additional challenges. Public perception of nuclear capabilities. They are disproportionately negative in Australia. This is one of the reasons why many times I am talking to prospective students and parents at open days at my university, and I'm telling people, actually, no, we're not teaching people how to build nuclear weapons. And by the way, we have a reactor just outside of Sydney. This can make it difficult to attract people to the field. And the sovereign nuclear expertise space, which nuclear academics are included in that are required to increase nuclear literacy and expertise in Australia, is critically limited in capacity. Many of my colleagues, they love what they do. They work really hard to make sure that we are educating the next generation of nuclear workers in this country. There are also, a lot of them are nearing retirement. And, at least among the nuclear physicists, I can count, on two hands how many we have in continuing positions in Australia. So, why do we care? Let's start with the submarines. We do actually need people who have some understanding of nuclear, not necessarily to PhD level, even just starting point of what is a nuclear-powered submarine, how is it different than nuclear weapons, and why is it important for Australia? We need people who can understand that to crew nuclear-powered submarines, to maintain nuclear-powered submarines, to make decisions about them. We also need people who can help assure the Australian public, AUKUS partners, and international community that Australia can safely and responsibly operate nuclear-powered submarines. That's not just a government job. That is a job that requires all of us who are in this community to help people understand what are we doing, how are we doing it, how are we trying our best to be responsible with what we are doing based on all of the expertise and capability that we can bring together for this kind of task. We also need to facilitate social license discourse on nuclear technology in Australia. This is partly to counter misinformation and disinformation. This is partly because of the history of nuclear technologies in Australia and the sometimes fraught discussions that are behind those. Now, that's with regards to submarines, but we all know in this room in particular that that's not all Australia does in the nuclear space. We need a sovereign literate nuclear workforce that can contribute to a number of different sectors, and we want to make sure that supply meets demand across all those sectors. That includes nuclear medicine, space exploration, mining, environment, safeguards, and nuclear energy if we choose to go there as a nation. We also may need people to plan for and support our neighbors, as we've been listening today, this morning, about some of those projects, as they consider and potentially embark on civil nuclear power programs of their own. So, how do we build this workforce? This is part of the pipeline, starting from secondary school all the way through the tertiary sector contribution. It is not complete. We haven't included the vet sector on here, and there are other actors that are really important, like ANSTO, which we've already heard about, that contribute to this pipeline and earlier. For now, though, I want to talk about starting in high school, and the shading indicates the level of expertise that is developed at each stage of the pipeline. You'll see students start out in high school. They might, encounter, because of a school demonstration or something like that, a visit to ANSTO, they might encounter nuclear science for the first time and get intrigued. Maybe they'll study physics or engineering or something related as an undergrad. Some of those students might go on to study postgraduate coursework or research degrees, and a smaller number still might get to postdoctoral work or research experience. Some of those, not all of them, might become academics that contribute to a lot of this pipeline. We train undergrads who become teachers. We conduct all levels of the tertiary level contribution to the pipeline. And we produce the next generation of academics to do this work. We have a lot of work that we have to do, not just education. Research is actually a really important part of what we do because it helps us inspire those students and also make sure our education is current. It also makes sure that we have connections in the industry, not just in Australia, but also abroad, that we can connect our students to, we can connect Australia to. All parts of this pipeline contribute to the private and public sector workforce. That includes academics that decide they want to do something else. And so it is really important to keep that in mind when we are talking about building that workforce pipeline that supports all of this. We have to get all the way to the end of this to make sure that all of it is supported. Let's put this in terms of the Australian Submarine Agency's description of the kind of workforce they need. We need a lot of people who are aware or nuclear aware. We need less people, but some that are nuclear competent, so they have some training, some education in the undergraduate, sometimes postgraduate level. We need a smaller number that are experts with experience that can contribute to this workforce. So we need decreasing numbers this way, but we need all of it in order for the pipeline to work. Sometimes I get asked, well, what if we train too many? One of the things that we've done, and this is specific to the ANU, but I want to expand it to all of our members, is we've had a look at where our nuclear science and HCR graduates have ended up post-graduation. This was done in 2024, and it was basically based on our LinkedIn connections. This is where all of our students have ended up, or at least all of those that we have connections with. And you can see there's actually quite a bit of diversity. There's some nuclear in there where they're directly applying their skills, but there's also a lot of use of data analysis and ability to work in high-risk environments. There's a lot in the medical space, for instance, IP, patent review, all of those kinds of things. So I have no issue telling my students they're going to get a job. They just might have various options to explore. In terms of what draws students to nuclear, this list here is based on our experience, but much of it is echoed in workforce planning for new nuclear power programs. I'm not suggesting we're at that particular point, but what I am saying is that this aligns with other experiences elsewhere. Scholarships help, especially ones that actually incentivize them to stay and continue to engage with people who are already working in the industry. Exciting and varied career opportunities. This one's really important. I can't tell you how many students have come to me very worried that they'd only find jobs in defense. They don't know that they want that yet, often. Opportunities for work placements, internships, research projects, those are hugely important. I make sure my students are directly engaged with ANSTO and that they go and see the Heavy Ion Accelerator facility, and if they can, do a project there, because that shows them what it's like to work in these places. And they're so excited when they do. We need teachers who are enthusiastic about the topic, and we need academics that are encouraging, passionate, and actively involved in nuclear research and education, which is what ANREN is about. We have members at all of these institutions and growing. And what we do, we're academics and also professional staff who support nuclear research and education. And what we aim to be is a trusted source of nuclear and radiation science and technology expertise and education for Australia. It's a bit of a mouthful, but we're a diverse bunch, actually. We are spread out across the country, and actually the distribution of expertise is also spread out across the country. Obviously, we have a concentration of interest from a careers perspective in these two areas because of the subs. We also have facilities on the East Coast that support these educational experiences, the hands-on research. That is important. So it's actually important that we connect across the country to enable these kinds of experiences. We have a lot of expertise. This is representative of our community, and it is growing. And we are working together to try and figure out how to do this well, collaboratively, in an environment where it's actually sometimes very hard to do that as universities with different economic drivers, different incentives, and a lot of lawyers. So the things that we do, we provide nuclear science and engineering education options, and there's a diverse range. We conduct research that helps build knowledge, train new experts, solve problems, and foster critical thinking skills, and of course, connect those students with what it's like to work in nuclear. We provide independent expert advice on nuclear science and engineering issues. This is actually important in the current environment, particularly given the social license challenges Australia has at the moment. We also do a lot of public outreach. We support schools. We have established connections with industry and governments that help make sure that we are current and we are doing the best we absolutely can to maintain our expertise. We offer a lot of coursework degrees. This is a sampling, and research degrees and short courses. Some of these are collaborative across our membership, and we've been working towards doing more of that kind of work, co-supervising projects, etc., as a way of helping foster this community and also ensuring that students get access to plentiful opportunities. So to conclude, we're a collaborative effort to increase nuclear literacy across the country and help build a stable and reliable pipeline for nuclear workforce for this country. It is a self-organized group. We're making the most of what we've got. Currently, we are unfunded, but we do have support through the ANU, through the ANREN Secretariat role. This is something that we are doing because we think it's the right thing. We are doing it often underfunded or unfunded, but it is actually, from our perspective, important, and we would love to work with you all to figure out how we can help our students contribute to this community. I want to acknowledge all my colleagues here. This is from the Australian Nuclear Academics Workshop, which we co-hosted with UNSW Nuclear Innovation Center, and some of the colleagues from the various institutions are here from our membership. I also want to acknowledge that we are not the only community that contributes here. ANSI is here. I said that I would mention they've got a table. You should go talk to them. They do lots of things as well that is helpful. that are helpful for this. So finally, thank you. If you have any questions, I'd like to open the floor for that. If you want to contact us for more information about NREN, you are welcome to. That's the email address.